Hi. How are we like this? Is this the best way we can sit? I'm going to give you guys my back, but I think I have to give my back to some people at least. Okay. So I have some questions, and I'm very excited to be talking to you, but I think we should just move to your questions first, and we engage in discussion from now on, and maybe we can have more questions in the following discussions that we will have with the rest of the speakers. So who wants to ask first? Okay. So should I, do we have another microphone? Okay.
Ich habe 3 Fragen an die Jury.
I have 3 questions to the jury. I've been watching the digital communities category since its inception. This year, the focus was on the violent revolutions. In the mainstream media, these revolutions are often called Facebook revolutions, which I think is not appropriate at all. Therefore, my first question, is there a risk of Facebook getting a golden Nike in a couple of years? Second question, I'm particularly interested in things that remain invisible, things that I do not find in Google, for example. Therefore, I'm interested in the other projects that were submitted. We don't hear anything about those projects. We only learn about the projects that got prizes. And the third question would be, what is the further development of this category? There is one thing I think is missing. I don't really see a lot of innovation in this category.
I only heard the last part, so not a lot of innovation. I don't know if any of you guys who understood the question would like to contribute something, because I didn't even hear the question.
Okay, should we repeat the question?
No, I think it's maybe too generalized to say that there's only bloody uprisings and also Facebook revolutions. This is very superficial to say. Of course, Facebook is involved, but it's no revolution will happen online and only via Twitter or Facebook. These are only tools for the people to be used to communicate, to spread the message faster. They use it like they used it 20 years ago. They used flyers or still printed something out, or maybe used audio cassettes to be quicker and spread the message. So this is just a sign of the times, So it's but it's not no Facebook revolution. So I think this is a very it's misinterpreted by some of the media that this is revolutions based on Facebook.
I agree with that, and what I want to say, I'm not in the jury, but there are works exhibited. I mean, for my category, you can see a lot in the festival town, and I think there's a book showing previous works and other works that have been submitted. And Facebook is a tool like print media, and I think most of the people who actually go on the streets don't even have internet access. And it just depends on where you research and who you talk to. You hear so many different aspects. So you cannot say it's Facebook or Twitter revolution. Yeah.
I only heard the last part too, and I don't know if I heard my name or not. Sometime around, I probably heard my name, but I don't know what that question was. Regarding the Facebook I also want to agree with both of you guys. I have to say that especially in like in like Syria or Egypt or especially Middle East countries where the access to the internet is roughly expensive compared to the income of one person. Like it's kind of hard to say that it's a Facebook revolution. It's Facebook's or social media are not just a tool. It's where you start collecting ideas. If you're abroad, if it's part of, it's like for me, I feel like I could be involved in the Syrian revolution on ground through Facebook or through the social media, but it's not that it's a Facebook revolution. It's that the people in the streets were able to see what others in different countries or different places were able to do through Facebook or through this freedom. It's Facebook just gave, or the social media, Twitter too, it's like gave the people part of this freedom. And when you practice part of a freedom, it's very hard for you to stop practicing that in your daily life. So it goes further into it's the freedom that you have online that you take with you to the street, and it's vice versa. It's the freedom that you see people are practicing in the street, people that I probably never met in my life, but I see them and I know that we have the same goal. After all, we have like a lot of similarities. We share everyday life as much as we share dreams about like future life.
Just a comment following on your guys' comment. In 1982, there was a massacre in Hama, and over 20,000 people were killed in just a few days by the regime in 1982. And there's not a video, not a photo, no documentation of that massacre of over 20,000 people. So if we compare that with the amount of flow of content that we have today, we get an idea of how revolutionary it is in itself for citizens to be able to document the reality in contexts where journalists are not allowed, or they don't want to go, or they're too scared to go. More questions? More contributions? More comments? Up there.
Hi, I had a question about the self-regulation of the people. Is there like do we have to have another leader to prevent a complete anarchy? Because the transition from tyranny to anarchy, how does one prevent that? And how does social media contribute to that peace?
To prevent, can you rephrase that?
Prevent anarchy among the people themselves. Can they self-regulate each other, and can they come up with new ideas and new regulations to control each other?
From my experience, these mobilizations, not only in the Middle East and North Africa, but also in Spain and in other countries, we tend to see this through media as something specific in time, through very specific acts and mobilizations on the ground. But it's more of a process, of a continuing process of learning and growing, and part of the big success of mobilizations like the Spanish ones, which we do not tend to see on TV anymore because there's nothing bright and huge and colorful and fireworks going on. But part of this process that's still ongoing is the integration of everyday people's conversations on political awareness. So people are growing aware on what these measures mean, or what these parties are trying to impose, and what is the meaning of this regulation, what is the meaning of this reform, how to react to it, how to contest it, what are the channels, what are the tools, what are the laws that they can use in their favor against these impositions. So it's actually a process of taking awareness of how to understand the political process, that it was a taboo to talk about politics in Spain until a few years ago.
And how long do you think it will take for at least the Arabic countries to be at that time where they can have a new beginning?
I think they're already learning how to deal with very repressive systems, but what's difficult, very difficult about the Arab Spring is that not only the citizens involved in the struggle are at stake, so other interests are at stake. So if the Syrian revolution was in itself isolated from the rest of the geostrategic interests of the area, it would continue to have the same goal that it began with, which is to overthrow the dictatorship and to build a country where people are free and where justice prevails. So that's still the goal of the Syrian revolution. Even if you hear about civil war, armed conflict, there's still a revolution going on. But this revolution coexists with a struggle between the geostrategic powers that are trying to influence the country and impose their agendas on behalf of the Syrian people's cause. So we cannot separate what's happening on the ground from interests of the countries around, like Iran, like Saudi Arabia, like Qatar. Everybody has their own agenda, and they're trying to play with the Syrian revolution. And that's why we see so many different descriptions of the Syrian revolution depending on where you go to, depending on what TV channel you used to. I've never seen an example of how much the instrumentalization of one specific country plays differently in media projections. So we really have to be careful with that and go to the sources, go to the Syrian voices, go to the Syrian channels, to the Syrian people on the ground to see what's happening, because there's so much going on that nobody is covering. And like our colleagues mentioned, so many peaceful resistance tactics that are completely silenced by mainstream media at this point. I don't know if this answers to your question or if you helped me vent. And,
yeah, like it's such a broad a plethora of categories
yes.
they have to, because they have to look at basic human rights,
yes.
but also the smaller things like LGBT rights in those countries. Where do they
yes.
stand, and
how
how does the general public see the LGBT rights in the country? So it will take a long process for
yes.
them to go. No,
yes.
Thank you.
No, I don't know if anyone else wants to add something. Yes?
Yeah, I just want to add that when we were last week at the Syrian border and in Jordan, and of course there is this European or Western fear that complete chaos breaks out in Syria and so on. And it was very interesting that the Syrian activists, none of them was afraid of that. They all said, no, this is definitely not going to happen, that chaos comes out or the Islamists win and this kind of stuff, because they said that we lived in peaceful next to each other. It's a complete different thing. What they are mostly afraid is that they all say that there is like a big thing coming. Everyone is feeling a big war. We talked at least to 7 or 8 people, and nearly all of them said that they are kind of waiting because of these interests. This is more the problem. I have the feeling that the people inside, they know what to do. And also this group that we showed a little video out of it, they are living in Austria. They told us that there are 5,000 Syrians in Austria. 80 of them are organized in this protests. And I asked them, what is your background? And he said, they are communists, Islamists, leftists, this. And it was very interesting. And he said that they have one goal in common, that's overthrowing the dictator. And I asked him, what do you do then? He said, then we will separate, because we have different opinions. But now we have one thing in common, and that's maybe one of the reasons why in Iran the people outside couldn't gather together and have this one goal, because everyone is fighting against each other, and this is one of the key points.
I actually wanted to add a little point about the Western view of the revolutions especially in Syria, because I'm from Syria. However, the West is always used to look at the Middle East as a zoo, more or less. Not that people there are animals, but it's like they're third world countries. They don't know what they're doing. They've just been ruled by dictatorships. And they accept it so they could accept other things. And now when they have a revolution, at the beginning when, even there, the West still wants to kind of put a story into it. So when it was 100% peaceful, the West is also questioned a lot of, stuff that they were not sure about, then the Islamic movements and all this stuff that they were afraid of, and the Islamophobia that the West lives in. And then later on, when some people were forced to carry weapons to defend themselves, the West comes in and they say, oh, now it's a civil war because you guys are killing each other and now we have nothing to do. And I have to go back to the name of the group I was here for. The Syrian people know their way. And I would say that people in general, they know their way. Like the West always try to send to be the babysitter or to be the father of all world. Like they know everything, and especially like governments talking, and that therefore the second hand comes in the people who are also in some way or another controlled by the governments, and they say they think they pretty much got it all, and they live in that fear. They never step out to actually feel how life is actually there. And when you went to Egypt, that was actually, you stepped out and you went over there to actually break that fear and see how does it feel like. And you probably have an experience about that, and you probably could talk about it. But the West usually generalize and try to say it's a civil war, or we're afraid. The West is always afraid of something, and it's always out there, and it never stops. So at some point, we gotta accept that life is what it is, and we have to break that fear to actually continue getting somewhere further.
Thank you. Maybe we can listen to Agnes and then get one or two more questions and move to the next session. Okay.
I wanted to add something. What was one of the conclusions I had in Egypt when I talked to the Austrian ambassador? Then I really realized, I knew it before, that there's so much strategic interest what the countries have. I mean, the West is afraid of losing their superior position in an international community. And that's why I think they work together with the dictators. They more look at the resources than at what is going on with the human themselves, the politicians.
Definitely. Okay, do we have, maybe we can pass the microphone up there, and then there's another question down here. And we'll have room for more questions after the following sessions.
Yeah, hi. This is a very related question, I think. And I want to ask your opinion if you think there is an avant-garde movement developing for vision of a better world or something like that, or utopian vision, or is it more fight against repression and see later what's happening? Yeah, because with your experiences, then the role of the internet, the communication, the visualization and so on, maybe there, yeah, that's the question. Do you think there is an avant-garde movement developing? Thanks.
That's actually a great question, and maybe you can answer first.
I think that in many of these repressed countries, there is a very strange and playful and immense concentration of creativity, which at the point of no return in the revolution just explodes. So I think it's difficult to categorize into avant-garde, or what is avant-garde there, what is mainstream there. It's not possible to say, because of course in many ways culture there has been repressed. So before you can develop avant-garde, you have to have the mainstream. So you can oppose against this. So only because there is a new movement, new creativity. I think it's too young to say that this is avant-garde, but it's definitely against what was common before and what was typical before in these countries. We have noticed that there is really a huge potential, and you didn't hear anything outside, and now suddenly the creativity is exploding. Art is exploding. Many artists there, and also directions you couldn't imagine before. You know, because the images also you had of these countries were very repressed and conservative. And of course there were people like in the West working, developing and following their instincts. So I think it's very probable that this is happening, but the categories are still very open.
I also wanted to add that maybe there is an avant-garde for every place. It's different, and maybe the dream of avant-garde that it's that the mainstream culture is avant-garde, becomes avant-garde, is coming through in some of these places, because there is this outburst of creativity that was held back for years and years, and now it comes out and it's full of, you cannot categorize it, like you cannot say this is mainstream stuff. It's creation at its best with the message of this mostly, and also hidden between artistic stuff. So I would say that it is definitely for some places a kind of avant-garde, and it's great that this avant-garde is not only something that is connected to few people.
Would you like to add something?
I think the most important thing is we need creativity, and we can work with more artists and to share their ideas with normal people. And I think the idea is very important. I like very much the Everyday Brilliance project. It's brilliant. But in China, it seems it's only a beginning, and there's only a few artists can speak out to make some change. But I think it will change very fast, and I hope more artists and more young people will join in and make a change. Yeah.
And I really like to praise our Golden Nika winners for this, because in their description that they sent to us, and the jury had to evaluate it, a very powerful part of it was that they described themselves as artists that want to go out of the salons and go to the streets for real forms of artistic production that reflect people's narratives and go back to the people. So out of the artistic salons, that's how they describe themselves. I think that's a perfect way to answer to this. I don't know, do we have time for, I don't know if Ingrid's there? No more? Okay, so let's then continue, and we'll have room for more questions in the following sessions, all right? Let's continue.